Well, there seems to be another place where they want to try to hide God, and that's the before the Big Bang.
Mm-hmm.
And God must have set that all in motion.
Well, that's actually an idea that goes back a long way to when the Big Bang first was proposed, and they point out rightly that the first guy to propose the Big Bang was a Catholic priest, Lemaitre, and the Pope right at that point made some statement that it demonstrated the existence of God. Lemaitre advised the Pope not to make it
Ex cathedra.
What's the term they use?
Ex cathedra.
That's something that
sort of means it means that a statement made such a way is infallible.
Infallible is the word.
Right.
Yeah. So not to make it infallible, to just make it as a comment, and then around 1970, Stephen Hawking and Roger Penrose, two very famous scientists, proved a theorem, and that is that from general relativity, you can prove that the universe began. This is Einstein's theory of general relativity that came out in 1916.
Mm-hmm.
You can prove that the universe began in a singularity. You hear the term singularity all the time in these discussions, and that's a point, infinitesimal point in space, and infinite density, infinite mass, and the universe began at that point, and it's associated. And then when they found the Big Bang, evidence for the Big Bang, they said, "Aha! This verifies this theory," and the universe began. And since it's a singularity, then everything must have begun at that point. There can't be no before that point. It has to be time, and everything began at that point. And that became a regular mantra among theologians. One pretty well-known theologian named William Lane Craig has promoted that, calls it it's another version of the cosmological argument for the existence of God, the Kalam cosmological argument. Now, and you'll find this again in a number of books. Dinesh D'Souza, the well-known author, right-wing commentator, had written a book a few years ago called "What's Wrong with Christianity," and he refers to it. And you look at any number of books, they'll talk about the singularity that began the universe. Well, the funny thing about it is, for 20 years now, we've known that singularity did not occur. And 20, 30, let's see, what is it? No, let's say 20.
Yeah, I guess it's been a kind of an anathema to physics, right? Because all the equations break down. So they've been actually looking for a way to get rid of it if they could. Right?
Well, that's yeah, but if it's there, it's there. You see, you have to.
Yeah.
But what Hawking and Penrose pointed out back around 1988, and Hawking talks about it in his book, the Brief History of Time, A Brief History of Time, which was, of course, an enormous bestseller, that this singularity didn't occur, after all, because of quantum mechanics, because they hadn't taken into account quantum mechanics. They knew they were doing. They were just saying that based on the general theory of relativity, this singularity would occur. There was nothing wrong with the derivation, but the derivation was just based on one theory, and that theory is not a quantum theory. General relativity is not a quantum theory. The people are still trying to find ways to
reconcile the two,
unite general relativity with quantum theory, and still haven't found a way to do it. That's what string theory and all that stuff's about. And but what I thought was particularly amusing is that D'Souza lifts out of Hawking's book a quotation where he says the singularity occurred, without completing the story and telling how. But you could read it on page 52 of Hawking's book. D'Souza refers to page 50, but it was really page 52. There's the statement that D'Souza quotes that the singularity occurred at the beginning of the universe, and then the rest of that sentence says, assuming that general relativity is correct. However, I find myself, this is now Hawking talking, I find myself now in a very amusing situation where I'm trying to convince people that the singularity didn't occur. And somewhere else he made the comment that I became famous by showing that a singularity occurred, and then I became famous again when I showed it didn't occur. So there's no singularity. Yet you will see that these people continue to repeat that in these books, book after book after book, where they ever bring up cosmology. They mention that, and the reason they do it, some of them, I'm sure William Lane Craig by now knows that's a mistake. I debated this with him in Hawaii in 2003, but he still has it in his website because he knows that the stupid people that read his stuff don't care one way or the other what the facts are.
Yeah, that's frustrating, isn't it? Let me switch gears here a little bit. Atheism, which is the lack of a belief in gods, it has been around as long as people have invented gods. The Euthyphro's dilemma was posed by Plato, who was born around 428 BCE, and he says, is what is moral commanded by God because it is moral, or because it is moral because it is commanded by God? And either one of those prongs of the dilemma lead you to some uncomfortable conclusions about God. Epicurus, born in 341 BCE, posed the famous problem of evil. He said either God wants to abolish evil and cannot, or he can and he does not want to. If he wants to but cannot, he's impotent. If he can but does not want to, he is wicked. If God can abolish evil and God really wants to do it, why is there evil in the world? It's a famous problem of evil. Baron Holbach, who was part of the French Enlightenment in 1770, wrote he was perhaps the first modern atheist. Even founder Thomas Paine offered an excellent criticism of the Bible in his Age of Reason around 1793. So sadly, none of these critics have been properly answered by the theists, who seem to offer the same old tired arguments over and over again, as you've just said. You've recently written a book called The New Atheism. So what's new about atheism, and what's wrong with the old atheism?
Well, first, that's a different question, actually.
Okay.
But let me just comment on the moral question.
Okay, sure.
I guess it's part of it, because one of the issues that we are addressing in the new atheism is the question of morality. Because, again, you hear a very common belief that we can't have morality without God. That, again, Francis Collins, in the language of God, makes that's his main argument, is I have this sense of moral right, and it can come only from God. This is one of the arguments that we really want to challenge, because there's an enormous literature out there now on moral theory and on the evolution of morality, and people have to become aware of that. And we want to let people know
brain
about
studies
it.
even,
Yeah,
and these sorts of things.
People know about it, that there are alternative explanations for morality. First of all, if you look at the scriptures, they're not great sources of moral teaching. This will shock a lot of Christians, but the New Testament doesn't have a single new moral teaching that hadn't been in cultures before that time. And that doesn't mean it doesn't have some good teachings, like the Golden Rule, and turn the other cheek, right, and so on. It's just that Jesus didn't invent them. He picked them up from the culture. The Golden Rule goes back to practically every culture. Confucius had a Golden Rule, and Lao Tse, and there was a Golden Rule in the Old Testament as well.